What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Talk of the Tundra, your GSPN Green Bay Packers podcast. Thank you once again for joining us. Probably on a weekend, maybe a Labor Day weekend where you're enjoying a nice summer shandy to end the summer, maybe
No free
catching some
ads.
sun.
No
No,
free ads.
no
A
free
nice
ads.
summer themed beverage.
Of course, joining me again this week is Ty Winish. Ty, how are you doing?
I'm good, Numac. I burst on the scene to remind you, hey, if mine and Moogles or some other brewer would like to send us some product and or money, we can shout it out all the time. But until then, no free ads. But
No free ads.
excited for this update.
Absolutely. Quick bit of housekeeping for you listeners. You are probably expecting the NFL, I guess, overarching over-unders for all the teams in the NFL division by division. That podcast will come early next week. Um, but for today, we have a quick update just on some practice squad and 53-man rosters, uh, moves that the Packers and Brian Gutekunst made this week. But before we jump into that, if you haven't already, if you're not already subscribed to the GSPN text line, text GSPN to 31032 to sign up. We'll be sending out a prompt regarding the Packers total season win. I guess total total wins for the season shortly here. We want your guys' input to see how well you think this team is going to go this year. If Matt LaFleur is capable of producing yet another 13-win season, or maybe exceeding that or falling short. So again, text GSPN to 31032 to sign up.
Yeah, excited to it was first we just asked Bucks questions. We did a Brewers question this last week. I believe you got to weigh in on the responses to that one on the latest Cruising for a Bruisin', our Milwaukee Brewers podcast. And now working to Packers because it's such an exciting time of the year for the Packers, and what better way to get a feeling where everyone's at than the record prediction, the classic prompt. Although I do wonder if it'll just be 100% 13-4 given the Matt LaFleur track record. I guess we'll see.
Right. Rohan is somewhere
Oh yeah,
just
beaming.
beaming that
Yeah,
we're doing some sort of prediction on a podcast. He's a proud co-host. But that wraps up all the housekeeping, I believe. Let's get into some of the moves that the Packers made this week. Obviously, with cuts on Tuesday, we saw the team go from quick math 78 to 53, and subsequently on Wednesday sign players to their practice squad. So real quick, I'll go through um, the 16 that they signed to their practice squad, and we'll talk about a couple of the moves that they made today on Friday. So they kept quarterback Danny Etling, running back Tyler Goodson and Patrick Taylor, receivers Travis Fulgham and Juwan Winfrey. They signed from Minnesota tight end Sean Bayer, so it'll be interesting to talk about that and how he fits into the realm of developing their tight ends, of which they kept four on their 53-man roster. Uh, Offensive tackle Caleb Jones, they were able to sign to their practice squad as well, which is good to see. Defensive tackles Jack Heflin and Chris Slayton. Outside linebacker Colby Jones and Ladarius Hamilton. Inside linebacker Ray Wilborn. And then cornerback Keandre Thomas and Benji Franklin. And then later in the week, they did end up signing Micah Abernathy to their practice squad, which is a big plus from me as the Micah Abernathy stan of this podcast. And today ended up cutting Rico Gafford in order to possibly sign Ahmed, their kicker. So, Ty, I guess what is your initial reaction to that slurry of moves?
yeah. I think my first thought pre the Abernathy and Gafford and potentially Ramiz Ahmed update. We don't have official confirmation, but I believe how it went with him was it was reported they would sign him, but they haven't yet. So the thought is
Right.
that's why Gafford was released, and then they will be adding Ahmed in the next who knows when. Maybe while we're recording, maybe a little bit after we're finished, whenever. But my thought before the subsequent moves was glad they retained everyone. Essentially, all the players that we kind of talked about. Maybe a team would be interested. Maybe you're at risk of losing that player. I know we're gonna reference him forever, but Andy Herman had marked Caleb Jones as a guy who was probably the most at risk for being claimed. He's still here. Heflin and Slayton, the defensive linemen who look good in preseason. And then I think Taylor, Goodson, and Winfrey, the offensive skill position players, who I think all certainly had their moments, especially Goodson and Winfrey,
Yep.
in preseason or just even over the last few years when they've gotten some opportunities. The fact that they're all still here on the practice squad is a good sign. I mean, they could obviously get plucked later on. We'll see what happens with other teams. But it seems like the Packers pretty much went and got everyone they wanted, including your guy Micah Abernathy after the fact, which that also feels like a nice win. As I think we talked about on the Cut Day pod, we talked about like maybe the Bears could use someone's like Caleb Jones, but maybe they'd go after a more proven player. That's exactly what they did. They claim Alex Leatherwood on waivers, take on about half of his contract, which means it's really a bargain deal to look at, a second round graded prospect picked in the first round. But they don't go for the unproven Caleb Jones. So moves like that around the league, O.J. Howard visiting with a team. I think Tyler Johnson was claimed by the Jaguars, or no, maybe not. I forget who now. But somebody got Tyler Johnson, one of the
I think it was the Jaguars.
I know it was one of the high waiver order
Yeah.
teams, right? The bad teams get first dibs on these guys. So
Repeatedly, by the way. Like they hold waiver they hold their spot in the waiver
till
line
week 3,
throughout
I
the
think.
week. Yeah.
I don't know why the start of the year it's so long, but yeah, I think was it the Jags got Ty Summers for some reason, and none of these other guys on the Packers, which is a little odd to me, but we'll take it.
Right.
But I think it worked out well that there were some of those higher profile guys that didn't make it through cut day, because I think that allowed these Packers guys to slip through and remain on the practice squad.
Right. For what it's worth, O.J. Howard is reportedly signing with the Texans, which will be interesting.
Oh, the Texans. Wasn't he visiting someone else?
I don't know. I did see that today though, because I picked him up in my last round of Dynasty for that exact reason. Because I don't know if if there's a lot of people that are going to be catching balls in Texan in Houston, and he can do that. So hopefully it turns out well for my fantasy team. But nobody wants to hear about my fantasy team. What they do want to hear about is more of these signings. I do want to talk about briefly the fact that they did keep all of their guys. It was so critical coming out of cut day that the Packers believed in all these players that they cut. They wanted them back, and it's nice to see that they did get them all back. Stans, Rico Gafford, who they cut, like we had mentioned earlier today.
We should probably cover the move that led to Abernathy getting released. I just realized I don't think we've gotten there yet.
I was getting there. I was very sad. I was elated. I was full of jubilee to see Micah Abernathy make the 53-man roster, and he tweeted that he was blessed to be in the position he was. Subsequently cut the next day as the Packers signed Rudy Ford, who was on the Jacksonville Jaguars as of Monday, but was released as part of cut day, and he is a bona fide special teamer, and Goody loves him. He called him one of the best gunners in the NFL. So, given how much we talked about special teams and their issues these past few weeks, it's really good to see the team make a move for a guy that can play that special teams role very, very well and be pretty much an upgrade at the position that the Packers need the most.
Micah Abernathy liked a tweet from a fan, it looks like, who this is the tweet. I just saw this because you mentioned his other tweet. I was like, let me see what else he's been doing on Twitter. Quote, this is from Pocket Aces, Houston Gamblers, unofficial. I don't know what the hell is going on with this account, but how much would you like to bet they knew they wanted to make this move? They just didn't want Micah to be picked up on waivers, so they waited until their waiver moved to cut him. Hashtag dirty money. You deserve better than this at cover 22. I'm sorry, man. Interesting for Micah Abernathy to like that tweet. I don't think he's thrilled with how things progressed, but I do agree. I'm just getting a proven special teamer that the team is high on is probably a good move. Kind of interesting the Packers essentially swap out Ty Summers for Rudy Ford. I think Green Bay probably feels good about that move. We'll see how it goes for Jacksonville, a team not exactly known for making the most cogent personnel moves in the NFL in these last few years.
For what it's worth, I am also a fan of the move. But I'm going to quote Goody here in his press conference talking about the move. He on on Rudy Ford, quote, he's got the speed and physicality that we certainly covet. We were looking at that situation for a while, a little surprised that he got shaken loose, but when he did, we were ready to get on that. So glad to see that they recognize that this is an issue for sure and not just letting it go.
Yeah, I think that that's the funny thing about this Packers team. We have so much, and we'll do a full preview before week one of what we're going to be looking for. But I think we'd all be lying a little bit if one of the first things we looked for wasn't like the first time they have to cover a kick, right? Like that's going to be like such a tone setter for the season. If they can
Yeah.
come out really well week one against the Vikings, it'd be such a great sign. If not, that'd be pretty concerning. But yeah, hopefully Ford can step right in and be that difference maker on the special teams units. The we fence, as many are calling it, which I don't know. How do you feel about the we fence?
If it gives results, I'm fine with it. Yeah, that's my take.
I'm really torn, but it is fun to say the we fence. It reminds me
Yeah.
of when I turned Gary Harris into a portmanteau and just said Garris. That's the we fence. What does it stand for? I
I
haven't seen the
think
story on we fence. I just
it's
keep seeing
from
it
it's from the special teams coach. That's what he calls his special teams crew.
because they're like together or something.
I think so.
So
I haven't
the
read.
offense and defense like they hate each other. I guess that would
That's
fit on
right.
this Packers roster the last couple of years.
The offense side it was.
Yeah,
Defense
yeah. The
go to,
defense is
go to bed.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it'll be good to see hopefully that this works out and that it has the impact that they want it to make. Um to touch on the practice squad again, we didn't mention we went through the list that of the 16 guys they kept only 15 there's only one player on the practice squad that wasn't in camp with them, and that's tight end Sean Bayer. Ty, you had said before we had started recording that this is a an intel move because tight end Sean Bayer was signed from Minnesota. I guess what is your take on on the Packers signing this tight end?
Yeah, I'm really interested by why it was this guy in particular, I guess. He has not gotten to do a whole lot, and maybe it was as simple as they just wanted a tight end and didn't have one, and he was a tight end who shook loose. His last season in Iowa, he played 4 years there. He did not do a whole lot. 11 catches for 158 yards and a touchdown in 7 games. So, not exactly a blue chip prospect. I'm going to guess this is probably a guy who's known more for blocking than receiving, which would make some sense with what the Packers look to do, wanting one of those guys around as a backup. So, yeah, I think, not a very wowing move. Again, as my conspiracy theory before the pod, this is the edge in Packers Vikings week one right here. Unless the Vikings go and get Rico Gafford to even the odds, the Packers clearly going to have a huge leg up thanks to the intel provided to them by Sean Bayer, or Bayer, however it's pronounced. But I'm guessing this is really just trying to get, a rough approximation of a kind of tight end that they're looking for in terms of a guy who can get out there, block. Again, not super familiar with this game, but I'm just going to assume that a guy who only caught 18 passes in 4 years at Iowa is probably a guy who can do a little bit of work in the blocking game.
For what it's worth, he looks like a guy who went to Iowa. Like he looks like he's a big dude.
He is a huge dude.
So, we moved away from it, but I remember a comment I wanted to make. Just touch on it briefly regarding Micah Abernathy's re-signing.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep coming back to Micah Abernathy because he's
Of
my
course
favorite
you
player
all year,
out of
all
camp.
year.
All
Dramatic
year.
last second victory. He's not even active for the game. You're gonna work Micah Aber. You know what? It would have been an easier win if Micah Abernathy was out there and
That's
that
right.
punt coverage.
I got to get myself a number 46 safety jersey.
No, did you hear? You didn't hear?
No,
He took Giannis's number. He's back and got a signed 34.
I like 34.
Yeah,
I
get
like
that
34 a lot.
34 Abernathy jersey.
Um, I'm really happy they signed them as aforementioned, but I was nervous when they had cut him to worry that this was going to become a Rasul Douglas type signing, but in working against the Packers. Like obviously Rasul Douglas was cut by the Cardinals before he signed with the Packers and becomes one of their best corners on the team and one of the best corners in the league. And that's all they could talk about last year on the commentators and the team, this, that. He really showed himself his worth when he came and tried out. And I was really nervous that this was what Micah Abernathy was going to do for another team somewhere else and come to um, sort of bite the Packers in the butt. So again, that'll be last but I touch on it. I'm glad that we didn't get reversed for Sewell Douglas.
That's always a good sign. I think one good point that may have been missed in all of the frenzy of moves and everything, and players coming in potentially going out. This is again from Andy Herman. I just saw he had shared this morning. Probably an underrated storyline so far that we got to where we are right now without any of Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Tunyon, and Watson all going on PUP, IR, any of that, all just on the active 53. Doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to go right away, of course, but it does mean that the team is not expecting these guys to be out. What, the shortest one of those lists is 4 games, right? Is that PUP list?
Yes, they did miss a minimum of 4.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe they're all missing 3 or something. Maybe they end up missing 4 and they don't get back on time. But at least it seems like sooner than later for most of those guys or all of those guys, which
Right.
that is good news. Although I think we share a little bit of skepticism of at least Watson being ready to go quickly because of his
Yeah.
unfamiliarity with the offense. Whereas the other 3 guys, they're vets. I think when they're healthy enough, they'll be ready to step in and play.
Yeah. When Jenkins, uh, Bakhtiari, and Crosby are all healthy, they're good to go. Crosby, we'll touch on in a minute 'cause I want to talk about that. But I don't think Christian Watson is going to be seeing many snaps to start the year. I think because of pure talent alone, Romeo Dobbs is going to be seeing snaps to begin the year because we saw what he did in the preseason and just the talent that he has. That it's going to be so hard to keep him off the field just from a coaching perspective and a fan pressure perspective. We know that Packers are pretty good about not giving in to fan pressure, but this kind of makes sense from both sides. So I think it'll be sort of exponential how much we see Christian Watson if he succeeds in his chances early in the season. Like he might get one target, one game, two the next game, and just kind of climb if those targets are being used for something useful and he's not making mistakes that are critical to the success of the offense.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is Rodgers continuing to talk up Sammy Watkins, and I think we know to expect a huge week 1. I guess we can't get too excited about that until week 2, how Sammy Watkins plays, but it would be interesting if they could get a better season out of him. I know when you run down all the things that he's basically gone through and dealt with over the last few years, it's been a while since he's had like a healthy normal season. So maybe there is more in the tank than I have kind of thought about as we go into this season. Obviously, we hope Lazard looks like a legit WR1, if not like a all pro WR1, which is probably way too much to expect. But yeah, the wide receiver room is so interesting because it seems like there's almost a logjam of guys around a similar skill level, and it's going
Yeah.
to come down to A, who can play the best, B, who can develop the most rapport with Rodgers. So the vets definitely have an advantage there. I do think it's going to be uphill sledding for certainly Watson and even Dubs to an extent, but I think they will have a shot to get some run, as you said, depending on if you get a quarter because somebody's injured or whatever in a certain week. It's going to be imperative that the young guys can impress in those limited reps.
Right. I think it'll be interesting to see what Sammy Watkins does, and we're getting a little bit into the nuances for this cut day pod, but I'll say it
True, true.
anyways. But the talent that Sammy Watkins had to play around was always not really that beneficial for him, right? In his first 3 years with Buffalo, he was getting thrown the ball by EJ Manuel and Tyrod Taylor. Not exactly high-powered quarterbacks. Then he went to LA, or he went to the Rams for a year and was catching balls from Jared Goff. Again, not the most high-talented quarterback. He did have 3 years in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, but he was the option behind Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce at least, like during the good weeks. So, and then last year he played the season with Lamar Jackson, who only played 12 games. And I won't say he wasn't wide receiver 1 or close to the top, but he also had to play with Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown. So he wasn't really ever the number 1 option. And none of those guys are at the talent level that Aaron Rodgers is at right now. You could argue Patrick Mahomes is, but not being wide receiver 1 or 2 in that offense probably held him back. So if there is upside to Watkins, it's that he has a chance to be wide receiver 1 or 1B with Alan Lazard with an all-pro MVP level quarterback for the first time in his career.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see how it goes. But you're right that Sammy Watkins was not on the roster bubble, not a cut day
Sure
player.
wasn't.
So, do you have any more takes on cut day for the Packers, or I guess post cut day is what we're really digging into here?
Yeah. Just
Oh
happy to
yeah,
see.
no, you
Just
said
happy.
Crosby. Have you talked about?
Oh no, we haven't.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I have something short on defense, and we'll get into Crosby. I'm just happy to see Chris Slayton and Jack Heflin back. That's really my take on the defense. Was that I wasn't really too knowledgeable on Kobe Jones, Ladarius Hamilton, and some of the other guys that kept on defense. I was just happy to see they kept Heflin and Slayton back on the practice squad so they can continue to develop and have their chance to make the roster um, for sure next year, if not get called up to have a chance this year. So it's just good to have those guys stashed to be continuing to work on their game. So
Yeah, I think when I look at this list, there's a few guys that stand out to me as like, oh, if they got called up to be depth in a given week, I'm not worried. Like we talked about, if Etling has to get called up, that's terrifying. But like if Tyler Goodson has to be a running back, Winfrey at receiver, and then Heflin or Caleb Jones on either side of the line, as like as a depth thing more than anything, there's no concern with me about that. Like obviously you'd rather have like starters and the main backups
right,
healthy, but I think those are really strong depth pieces. And I guess you could say Micah Abernathy at safety as well. Those are guys who, if there's just some sort of injuries that are affecting your depth there, I think you feel pretty good about any of these guys stepping in to be the new backups for a week or two.
right. Okay. So moving on to Mason Crosby. The sentiment coming out of, at least on Twitter and some of the spheres we're in with Packers things, was that coming out of cut day and cutting Ramiz Ahmed was the signal uh, that Crosby was 100% and that he was one of the last players to be added to the practice squad. He wasn't actually added to the practice squad on Wednesday like we had seen kind of reported by some other people in Packers media. And he's expecting to be signed this Friday, or I guess today is what the plan is, as we touched on earlier. What is a little concerning is that they're doing that rather than giving it to somebody else like Rico Gafford. Like we touched on it, I believe, in the last episode. If not, you and I just talked about it, but that kickers can be signed in season relatively easily. A lot of them are always ready, and they don't need to know the playbook like a QB does. Like having Danny Etling be a backup and learn and knowing the offense on the practice squad is important in case something catastrophic happens with Love and Rogers. But you can sign a kicker off the street to go in and tell them just to kick the ball. They only need to know a couple sets for fakes and play calls like that. Otherwise, they just go do their thing. Having Ramiz Ahmed on the practice squad kind of seems that Mason Crosby's injury might be more, not that it wasn't serious, but it might still be serious going into week 1 than we initially thought. The sentiment has been he's expecting 100% to play week 1. He's said that pretty much all offseason, but going from confident that Mason Crosby is healthy and going to be healthy for the season on Tuesday when they cut Ramiz Ahmed to now being like 90% sure that he's going to be healthy for week 1 and the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think John from the Discord posited this theory to me when we were chatting about what it means that Ahmed would be on the practice squad. What if Crosby is mostly ready to play, but also considering hanging it up after this year? Kind of a down season last year. As we discovered, he's not as old as we think, but who knows how long he wants to kick or how
Right.
he's feeling and everything else. I mean, we've obviously seen players walk away from the NFL earlier than they maybe had to. So
Right.
an interesting thought as well. And maybe we're just reading too much into wanting to keep a good kicker around just in case something else happens with Crosby, which is also an option. But I do think it means something that they would. I mean, basically giving up Rico Gafford, a special teams, a wee fencer, I guess, who I believe the new, is it, how do you pronounce the new special teams coach name? Biascata?
I think it's Biasacha.
Biasacha. That makes a lot more sense. Apparently, he liked Gafford, though. So, I certainly think it means something to give up on at least a promising special teams player, if not otherwise, because I know he was one of the guys who was bouncing around from receiver to corner, which generally doing that more than once is not a very promising sign for your NFL future on either side of the ball outside of a
Right.
Wii fence. But I think it means something.
Right. I think it does have some significance. Like, I think I joked I saw a TikTok the other day. It was you have to start one, bench one, cut one from Aaron Rodgers. And it was Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, and Donald Driver. And he cut Driver because he barely played with them. But then his reasoning for benching Jordy Nelson was because he's a farmer now, and he's just like, oh no, I will do
Yeah,
whatever
he
he's
said he
doing.
packed on some pounds, I think.
I think he did. But I think like the sentiment is like similar between Jordy Nelson and Mason Crosby. Obviously, Jordy just kind of got old after his last injury at the Packers and just didn't really have that sort of level of talent anymore. Um, but I think I'd see a similar sort of path for the both of them. I could see Mason wanting to go hang out with his family more and be sort of the dad that he wants to be and has been in the Packers community for so long. But also, I don't think I see him being Robbie Gould, who's I'm pretty sure still kicking for the 49ers, but
That
he's
sounds
been
right.
yeah, I don't know why he would ever retire because he just is. Apparently, Robbie Gould's only 39. I thought he was like 45. Robbie or kickers just look old, man. They just look old.
We
I feel
talked
like
about it. It's the stress.
I think I've seen I I, I think it's because I've seen Robbie Gould uh kick balls for the Bears for so long. For so long. He's like the only Bears kicker I really remember at before he left, obviously. Yeah, I thought it, but he's only 39, so I guess the next one I guess will be Sebastian Janikowski. I think he was at least 40 when he retired. But
For a second, I thought you meant that Sebjan was still kicking, and I was going to lose my mind, dude.
he's only 44 right now, and his last
Wow.
year his last year was 2018, so he's
Wait, he only kicked until he was 40?
40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. How long did
Uh,
Vinatieri go? He
uh,
had to be into the 40s, right?
37. Not really.
No way. I was
Vinatieri is now 49.
Okay, so he was kicking in his 40s. It hasn't been 9 years since he retired.
Correct.
Okay.
He his last kicking season was in 2019, so 47-ish.
Yeah.
Okay. We're
Okay,
getting to
that's good. That's good. I'm glad that happened. Yeah, that was his age 57, 47, his age 47 season, excuse me.
right. So to bring it all back around,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think Mason Crosby gets there. I do, if we're going conspiracy level stuff, like I could see that being
Yeah.
sort of the reasoning, and I would be happier about that reasoning than is he okay to kick this
For
season?
sure. 100%.
Yeah. So I don't think I have anything else to chat about regarding these moves. We're finally really getting to some football.
Yeah.
It's November. November. It is September 2nd today, 9 days from this very podcast.
Woo.
We'll be watching some Packers football as the Packers take on the Vikings in Minneapolis. So
There we go. We
we're
have one
so
more thing.
close.
We have something else.
Ooh, another review.
We have a review. You
Ooh.
haven't seen it. It's to the Discord forum. I just sent it to you on private message, but from
Okay.
it will just you can just go ahead and dive in here. I think you'll have fun. This was a
Wow.
review sent specifically to make you read something. I didn't expect it to make you read it as you, basically putting words into your mouth, but I think that makes it even more fun.
I can't believe I don't think I can read this out of respect for myself, but I will because we got a 5-star review.
You got to do it for
This
the
is
5 star. There was a
this is
photo
a
attached.
this is a 5-star Spotify review from I can't pronounce his the nickname right. Is it Wico or
I think it's
Wicho?
Wicho. I think
From
it's Wicho.
from Wicho Stan in the Discord, aka Logan. His review is as such, quote, I, Numac is known, Wisconsin's #1 Bayport Pirates supporter, hereby attest that I have never once hit a quote certified piss missile in my exploits as a part-time softball, full-time Oriole indulger. P.S. Luis Urias is the best player on the Milwaukee Brewers. Whether or not that statement, unquote, whether or not that statement is notarized, we have yet to be seen. Whether or not it's true is definitely debatable. We'll have to get Snopes in to fact check this and see if it's flaming hot. I forget what their ranking system is, but
It's like false statement or whatever it is. Yeah.
yeah, lying pants off. That's what your
Oh,
pants are
okay.
on fire. Pants
Yeah.
are on fire. So who's to say that I, noted Ashwaubenon Jaguar graduate, is a Bayport supporter? But that's neither here nor there. Thank you, Logan, for your
I, I
5-star review.
I can't think of
We appreciate it.
a better advertisement for the GSPN Discord than this like one sentence that has like 5 or 10 like inside jokes to the chord. So that's
Yeah.
loaded. If you don't understand any of that, it's time for you to head on over to gspn.info and use that Discord link. Make Numac read something equally ridiculous as long as you leave us 5 stars. We're growing the numbers already on Apple and Spotify, so please keep it up because it really does help
Yes.
us grow the show as the season gets going here.
Yes, please and thank you. So, Ty, you have nothing else?
I'm tapped out. I'm ready for over unders. I'm excited to do that pod and yell about the Cincinnati Bengals and probably
We are
others.
going to yell about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Us and well, we won't say who yet. Never say a guess before you record, but
That's right.
not quote unquote a guess. Let's leave it at that. Let's not besmirch anyone's name.
Yes, but all right, everybody. Thank you again for listening to another episode of Talk of the Tundra. As Ty mentioned, we will be back very soon with the NFL over-unders. Until then, enjoy your Labor Day weekend with a non-branded lemonade beer. Thank you again for listening. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. And we will talk to you soon. Ty, thank you for joining me.
You're so welcome, Numac. Thank you.